Yeah, what's good, y'all? It's your man, the Bigga P, and I just want to share my thoughts on on the both the HBO and Showtime cards from last night. I have to say, overall, it was one hell of a night for boxing. No doubt about that. Um, First, I guess I'll talk about the Showtime card. The Showtime card was a split site, quadruple header, I guess you want to call it that, where you had Tank Davis versus Liam Walsh in the first fight in England, and then you had the triple header at the MGM Casino in Maryland with Gary Russell facing Escandon for in the main event for the WBC featherweight title. Now the Tank fight, Tank is one of those is one of the new younger fighters that I'm still skeptical on. Um, the Pedraza fight, which was a wonderful victory for him, but it's one of those fights that I thought it was just more, it was also more on Pedraza having a silly fight plan than Davis, and as well as Davis, pretty much walking him down and making him pay for actually being within his range before brutally knocking him out. So although, like I said, it was a good win over an undefeated fighter, I was still skeptical on Tank. Liam Walsh. The only fight I remember I was familiar with was the fact I think he was part of the last of Scott Harrison, the guy who used to terrorize feathers back in the day before got off track. And I think that's probably the main fight I remember from him. And he was also undefeated. I'm thinking to myself, maybe Liam will probably be a little bit more too experienced for him, and that he may actually pull the upset. And then, of course, you had the little incident in the on Friday where at the weigh-in where Tank, I think it was on his third try that he made weight. And I'm thinking to myself, if we're having weight problems now, although I think it was like 2 ounces, but nonetheless, 2 ounces is still a thing. And and he's thinking to himself, if he's already having weight problems here, he must be cutting a lot of weight, a lot of weight off. And I know that drew a lot of comparisons to, of course, someone who he's also familiar with or close to, Adrian Broner. Now, with that, I'm thinking to myself, oh, okay, maybe Walsh is a real live dog after this. Turns out he was not. Pretty much from the couple rounds wasn't really that, didn't have that much action. But one thing that Walsh was doing, and I couldn't understand it, was his hands were just so low. And then the Tank just literally just bashed his temple in with overhands over and over again, which caused the first knockdown. And then in the third round, and then Walsh, instead of at least attempting to get on his bike or even attempting to hold, he just stayed on the rope with his hands down and got blasted again with a couple more punches. And then, the ref was just had to be forced to stop it. And I'm like, really? Walsh, I mean, you've been a professional for how long? And two things, and you just keep your hands that low for him to hit that same punch over and over again. So, I mean, hats off to Tank. I mean, he did what he had to do. Do I still have questions on him? Yes. Do I think he's tough? Yes, I also do. And he did. I mean, one thing I did like, Tank did throw his jab out more. He was a lot more patient. So I think now we're seeing more of the Floyd influence in his fighting style starting to creep in. So yeah, I mean, hopefully at this time, maybe later on this year, I'll give him another significant fight, or even hell, maybe even attempt to go after one of the other super feather champions. The only thing is though, it's PBC, and it's gonna be hard because the other champions are down with HBO, but hey, we're starting to see crossover fights now. I mean, if they can make Triple G versus Danny Jacobs, then other fights should not be that much difficult. So we'll see how that goes. So that takes us into the triple header that's in Maryland. The first fight was Francis Bartholomew versus was it Kerry Relic? Pardon me if I pronounce his name wrong. This fight I was expecting a stinker. I'm not gonna lie to you. Bartholomew, although a sound fighter, is not someone I really like enjoying watching. And Relic, the only time I watched him was the fight he had with Burns, with Ricky Burns. that fight where I think it was already written that dude was not going to win that fight. He wasn't supposed to win that fight, even though he gave Burns absolute hell in that fight. I don't remember if I actually had him winning the fight, or was it that close, or was it just like a 1-point victory. I don't remember. I'd have to actually go check my notes. But regardless, Relic did make a good impression as a, you know, he was a pretty, he was a pretty, decent fighter. What we got was actually a wilder fight than I expected. First round was just dirty, wrestling, and then pretty much Relic was putting in a lot of pressure, working behind his jab, lining him up with body combos, and then Bartholomew too was just doing his little shoe shining and stuff like that. And then the fifth round, he got caught, and then went to the ropes hard. And here's where I think the ref. Now, if you go into the ropes hard and the ropes are keeping you up, it is a standing 8. And I understand, and it was called a knockdown as such. But I feel like the ref should actually let him. I mean, Rock was in the midst of actually, trying to throw a combination to actually put him away, and the ref had to stop it. I mean, and I guess like I said, he got the knockdown call, but so one thing is like, he could have been something different. And then, some of the dirty stuff continued. Bartholomew, hit the guy low several times. I think, actually not several times, only a couple of times there, which got a warning. But then he did land a very sneaky body shot down in the middle, which had Relic going down, like, legit. And I'm like, okay, because Bartholomew's punches to the head weren't really doing anything, didn't have any effect. And after that, Bartholomew, I think, started to fade a little bit more, although Relic, kept, cognizant of the body attack. He's still, I think he's more cautious, but then he started lighting up again. Shots to the head, shots to the body. And I think Relic actually, swept, the last 2 or 3 rounds of my card. I mean, I scored about 114, 112 for Relic. And I was expecting scores in that range. And I don't even want to repeat the scores, the official scores. The unofficial scores were were in my range. Some where I think Steve Farhad actually had the same score as I scored, 114, 112 for Relic. But it was clear that the job was already in, and Relic was not leaving with a win unless he actually KO'd the guy or he got himself DQ'd or something like that. It was disgusting. I felt for Relic. I mean, he's not gonna want to go fight overseas again. I mean, you come here. I mean, it's one thing if you want to lose. If you're gonna lose like that, at least lose by maybe 2 points. And okay, then you could probably see a couple of swing rounds here and there. But when you lose by the amount that he lost, I think the closest car was by 3, and even then, that's that's okay. That's probably the minimum. I definitely agree with that, but when you had the other guys they just went wide, and I'm like, what rounds? How many rounds? In fact, the scorecard was posted. I could even bring myself to even look at that card, man, to look at the PDF, because I know I'd just be like, what the fuck. So I felt for Relic. As for Bartholomew, he, like I said, I mean, at one point I don't think his power is there. I mean, granted, the body attack. I mean, if he's gonna be successful, I mean, dude is gonna have to really stop fighting so nonchalantly, and B, he's gonna have to really develop a body attack to really stop some of these. Because, like I said, Relic absorbed some shots to the head and didn't really seem to faint him. It was just the body attack that actually started slowing him down. So, yeah, I don't think Bartholomew, in terms of his firepower, and I think it was eliminated too. So. He'd probably be the next in line after Indongo and Lipinets. That is if that fight ever comes to fruition. But we'll see. Second fight, Andre Dirrell versus Jose Uzcategui. And again, excuse me if I pronounced that name wrong. Andre Dirrell, like I said, I've been a fan. I'm a fan of his. Fan of him since the Olympics. Out of the Super 6, when Super 6 was announced, I mean, granted, he did have a couple performances prior to Super 6 that you're like, what the hell is he doing? I think it was the Curtis Stevens fight. But, when Super 6 came about, I'm like, okay, this guy's about to be a star now. So I actually pegged him to actually be the one to actually win Super 6. And then, you have the Froch fight, which was a complete robbery, and Darrell should have became champion that night. And then you have the Abraham fight, which was probably his best performance as a fighter until the dirty shot after the bell. Not excuse me, it wasn't after the bell. It was the dirty shot when he slipped down and he took a left hook uppercut, a left hook hooker cut that pretty much ended the fight. And since then, he had been very he hadn't fought a whole lot. I mean, maybe once a year, if even that. And usually on lower level cards, and I think he had the stuff. He was down with 50 for a minute. He was relegated to a lower role, and meanwhile his brother coming from cancer became and actually became accomplished literally more than what Andre did. He became super middleweight champion. He had the belt for a little bit. And right now even now today he's still in the midst of everything. He has a title shot in a couple months or whatever against Colin Smith. But yeah, you're wondering like when is he gonna put together? But the fights, I thought it would be the DeGale fight, which was vacated. It was for one of Ward's vacated belts. Was it Ward's vacated? No. It was somebody's vacant belt, and I was there on that fight, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is about time. He's about to beat DeGale, who I was never high on, and still not really high on. And he dropped that fight. He got knocked down twice, and it was frustrating to watch him just to get awkwardly beaten up by DeGale. So yeah, it's just frustrating, because he has the talent. I mean, he has everything. He has the speed. He has the reflexes. His defense. He can punch. And out of all the OG Super 6 members, I mean, he's the one who's accomplished the least. I mean, even Jermaine Taylor, even after the brain bleed and everything, that was able to come back and win, become a middleweight champion again. Imagine that, and you have Darrell who's just like and but I wish the best. I was hoping that something will come of, and then this fact, and even this last fight. I mean, I don't know if it's just he's not taking the shots right. Pretty much he's gotten knocked down in his last couple fights. I mean, the last fight I saw, he was knocked down. What was it, Blake Caparello? And with a guy has 6 knockouts about that time. He knocked him down clean. And I'm thinking to myself, what is going on? So when I saw this fight, I'm like, oh, okay, this is an interim title, and interim title to me is just that, it's that one lower step, because DeGale, after that war he had with Jack, has suffered a whole bunch of injuries, if you want to call it, a lot of injuries that he's currently recovering from. So IBF is pretty strict about there, and when the IBF calls an interim belt, it's like, okay, yeah, this is what's going down. So. It was for the interim super middleweight championship. I don't consider interim, by the way, real champions, but I consider one step below a champion. As if DeGale decides to not fight at super middleweight anymore, or retires, or does whatever, then Darrell or Escandon would become full champion. So I was hoping. So that was like, this is probably his last chance. Now Escandon, I've seen, the first time I've seen him was on the HBO card for Karbov, and Karbov pretty much outboxed him. And he didn't, for a guy for what they were talking about in terms of his record, he didn't really show me anything in terms of power. I remember Karbov just boxed his head off. And then I think it was after that I saw him on the PBC cards, and I think he knocked out Julian Jackson's sons violently. Okay, so that's where that power comes from. And I was like, this guy has some heavy hands. So it's either Darrell's going to get caught by it, or Darrell's going to box his head off. Well, the fight was a combination of things. Darrell did absorb some shots early on, and he wasn't taking them overly well as I like it to. I mean, he was staggering all over the place. Escandon was putting a lot of pressure on him. And the one thing in this fight that annoys me, and I think they were both doing it, is just the switching of stances. I think Darrell is a natural southpaw, but he's doing that and he's switching stances over and over again. It was like, why do that? And it was even worse for Escandon, because I think is a righty, and when he switched lefties, he didn't really have anything on it. But when he switched righty, I mean, he was effective. Those right hands were landing, and it was more or less, you know, when was Kentucky going to catch him? And there was an incident, I think it was like in the third or fourth round, where they called him after the bell. And, you know, Darrell didn't go down. He was on his face, and he was like, okay, good, you know, it's an accident. And, you know, it was perfectly fine, you know, and so the fight continued. The ending, though, and this was after Darrell's having, you know, had a pretty couple good runs himself. I mean, you know, he showed the reflex, the head movement, everything like that. But he got, again, you know, one thing Darrell keeps on doing, and is laying on the ropes a little bit too much. So Louis Kentucky threw a combination, like, you know, as the bell rang, the final punch, a left hook, you know, called him after the bell. This time Darrell dropped. And I'm like, oh crap, not again. Not again. And so it's like, you know, you're thinking, is Darrell going to continue to fight? Now, I'm not one of those people that said, oh, Darrell's faking. No, he wasn't faking. I mean, he was wobbled throughout the bout at various times, and then he took a left hook from a heavy-handed puncher, and that put him down. And I'm like thinking to myself, okay, this is the fight, and this is going to be a DQ win for him, and that's what it was. Now, what happened is, now if you ever been at a card with to see either Andre or Anthony Darrell fight. I saw him, you know, cause I saw Darrell, as I mentioned, I saw Darrell and Miguel. The Darrells, they're out there, man. Like, they're out there in numbers, man. They are very loud and passionate about, you know, about this boxing stuff. There's no question about it. They are out there, man. You know, they're cool people, you know. And like I said, and you know, and I just knew this was gonna be ugly, because you could see them, like, the camera panned to, you know, it's Anthony and then probably other members of the Darrell family. You know, they were wilding out, and you know, and Darrell himself, Andre, was like, okay, you know, he forgave him, whatever. Just go to the corner. It's good sportsmanship and everything like that. And then you have Darrell's uncle, Leon Lawson, come in there. Apparently he shook who's Kentucky's cornerman's hand, and then land an absolute hell of a sucker punch, a left hook. I mean, now I should be jaded on that, but you know, we had this little incident before with what's his name, Wanma's trainer, Wanma, and then the trainer, you know, getting check hooked, and then, you know, I should be jaded on that already. But the fact that this already had happened before, I'm just like, oh crap. And it was clean too, man. That left hook was clean. You could see that sweat, you know. And the fact that Uzcategui was just like, I mean, two things. I mean, obviously he's a professional boxer, but he must have had his mouthpiece in. Because I mean, Darrell's uncle, you know, was a bigger guy. But pretty much, like I said, he hit that clean left hook, and Uzcategui was just looking at him, just like shocked. And then, you know, he did like this hop thing or whatever, you know, he was trying to get out this crane kick wave, you know, where, you know, kicking out the corner. And I was like, oh, and I saw that, I was like, oh, and you know, that's assault. I mean, yeah, that dude is going to jail. To even add on to what's going on, I mean, the shit was getting a little wild, and then, you know, his uncle slid to the left out some other door. And I think currently now he's at large or on the run. I mean, in fact, I'm pretty sure he was probably out of that state within the hour. That's, of course, he wasn't. If he actually drove there, he wasn't in his hotel room. I mean, he was gone, bruh. He was gone after that. And then afterwards, in the interview, you know, we have Darrell pretty much cussing, you know, throwing a little cussing every now and then. And then afterwards, he starts, you know, Jesus, yes. I'm like, how you gonna start swearing, and then afterwards you gotta start talking, you know, using Jesus' name in vain or whatever. I was like, it was pretty surreal, man. Boxing just attracts these types of you know, this unique brand of chaos. I think that's the way I can explain it. But for now, Darrell is the interim IBF super middleweight champion. and most likely Darrell DeGale too will come to pass once DeGale comes back. And that fight is even now is like the first fight. It was like at least there was somewhat I mean, now Darrell I think has his issues, and now DeGale, who I thought got the hell beaten out of him by Jack, and his issues. It's like what is that fight even going to be like? And that's gonna be the wild thing, and I guess we'll see when DeGale's ready to come back. Now, as for Uzcategui, I mean, I know they had said he had police protection, and he's gonna file a lawsuit, all this other stuff, and I know he's going to. I mean, he's got to file a whole bunch of complaints. That's for sure. I mean, he was winning the fight. I mean, unofficially, he was up by 2 on two of the cards and even on the other. I mean, I mean, if it went to the cards, he would have won a majority. He would have won a majority technical decision. But I mean, obviously that dude's gonna be in the mix. I mean, it was an entertaining fight, and he was winning the fight. So, I mean, it just happens. Sometimes you lose control of yourself. I mean, and shit happens. So yeah, and then the main event was Gary Russell Jr. versus Russell-Escandon, and this fight I've been waiting for a while. I mean, that was Gary's last fight, and it was I'm a fan of Gary Russell, and I know this had like delays. And one thing about Gary that I don't like is that he takes so long. He fights like he takes these breaks in between his fights, and you want him to be more active because he's a talented guy. Escandon was also pretty inactive. I was also too at his last fight, which wasn't televised. And then it's like, and then I think it was originally postponed because Escandon had a back injury. So I was waiting. I was saying it's either going to be pressure or speed, And 7 rounds. It was one hell of a show. I mean, Gary's right hook. Gary's right hook is probably one of the pound for pound, one of the top punches in boxing today, because he dropped him early. I think it was in the 2nd round. And then, again, and the right hook also played a part in the stoppage. But Escandon, man, he was taking some ridiculous combinations, man, and he was tough. He tried to hang in there, even try to go to Gary's body to really, to see if he could actually do it. But it was just he just didn't have enough enough defense to not get caught. I mean, he was getting hit with uppercuts, like 1, 2, 3, 4 uppercuts in a row. I mean, Gary was teeing off him many times. He was tough. And then, like I said, in the 7th round, it was a right hook to the temple that sent it, and then you see Escandon walk back to the ropes, and as he was going down, the referee stopped it. Now, most people would say, "Hey, that's an early stoppage," but considering what Escandon was taking, this wasn't like a 1st or 2nd round stoppage. This was the 7th round, and he had taken some punishment from Gary, so I had no problem with it. I mean, dude acquitted himself well, and my hat's off to him. But yeah, Gary was just on another level, and one thing that I did like though was he apologized for what happened in the previous fight with Darrell and them, and I thought that was pretty classy. Didn't really have to do that, but I thought it was pretty classy there. And I know he started calling out Lomachenko and then Santa Cruz, and I want him to go. I want him to face one of those guys. I think it's about time for him to get some unification, because I know he keeps talking about, oh, he doesn't have that many more years left in the boxing ring, and I'd rather have him close out his career with those with high profile fights, more high than anything else. So yeah, it was a Showtime showed out last night. So after that. And I think the whole thing ended a little early, so I went and of course I got myself a little drink, and afterwards, I think I ended 30 minutes or so, then turn on the HBO. Well, before the HBO card, there was a PBC card on FS1, and I thought this was probably the stupidest thing that you can do, is to run a PBC card against an HBO card. And I was pissed too, because that card I actually wanted to watch. Jorge Lara, he destroyed that guy. And then Benavidez versus Porky, which I caught later on, which was a pretty damn good fight too. And I was pissed though that I had to watch it in pieces and then watch the whole fight later, because they wanted to air against HBO's card. The HBO card was a doubleheader. First was Ray Beltran versus Maciello. Um, and that fight was short and sweet. Second fight, first round, both of them were bleeding because of the headbutt outside the skull, and then Ray's eye. I mean, it was pretty wild fight. Second round, Beltran absolutely knocks him cold. I mean, there's really no words to describe how hard that left hook was. That left hook was from the '80s, man. Beltran just, it was a lead left hook, man. Caught him flush. I mean, arms were stiff, but the feet were trembling. That was the type of knockout it was, man. It was just absolutely scary to watch. He was down for a minute, and I was like, and this is New York, so when you suffer a knockout like that, out comes the stretcher. And you didn't even want to see anything like that. I mean, he was on the ground for a while, and hell, even Maciel tried to get up from that, but they had to keep pushing him down. And I thought, okay, this is, HBO, New York is now being very cognizant of this fact because they're making sure that he's getting all the attention he needs. Because, of course, most of us, as everyone knows, I mean, the reason why this is the fallout between what happened with, I mentioned this before, between Mike Perez and Mago Abdussalamov. That particular fight, that was a brutal fight that Abdussalamov didn't get the type of medical attention that he probably needed immediately, and then, it's a sad story, but in this case, they're taking super precautions on that one. And they mentioned Beltran is like, for him to get his green card, like he had to prove that he had something special for him to actually keep doing it. Well, he just scored a brutal knockout in front of the whole world. So it was nice. So hopefully, it does lead to him getting his green card, and he was really emotional about it because just be able to sit back and because he wanted to be able to support his his wife and his children. So yeah, I guess when the stakes is that hard, you'll fight anyone in any way you possibly can. So hopefully it does lead to a shot at 135 for somebody's 135 belt, but we will see. And then the main event, Terence Crawford versus Felix Diaz. Crawford, of course, is probably one of the top pound-for-pound fighters in boxing today. The only knock against him is now he's at 140 and there's not a lot of star power in there. It's really just him and Julius Odongo, who's actually in the crowd, too. They gave him a little shine, and I like that. Because, he is the other 140 fighter that actually holds the other two belts in the division. So it was... Yeah, and for Felix Diaz, now Felix Diaz has has gone up and down the scales. He's operated at both 140 and 147, and he probably was the best opponent you could probably get within the time frame. It wasn't like a quick time frame, like that. But Diaz, has enough of a pedigree that he could actually give Crawford some trouble. And a gold medalist, and then he arguably, of course, he arguably beat Lamont Peterson, and then, of course, later on, he took the zero of another fighter, and then I think he had a stay busy fight, so he was more than capable to put in work. So the fight at first, it was like, Crawford was getting caught by these wild hooks. Because also, Felix Diaz, the only advantage he had in the ring is he was 4 pounds more than him on the fight night weight. I was like, why is he a super middle in this? That's kind of crazy. And he put up that much weight afterwards. So yeah, Diaz was landing early. It was just the hooks landing it was just the hooks. He was just really effective landing these leaping hooks, and I'm like, if Diaz had more power than that, I was expecting, then, I was like Crawford would be in trouble. And Crawford was taking them hooks a little bit too much. At first I was thinking, okay, take one leaping hook, but then he was taking a lot of hooks. I'm like thinking to myself, this is either he still hasn't gotten used to the guy, or he hasn't adjusted yet. But when he did adjust it, it was just a slow beating. He beat Diaz up so bad. It was incredible. It wasn't just schooling him. It was just a straight beating him down. And then Diaz, though, who was in the fight, even in the last round of the fight, I mean, he went balls to the walls. He tried, man, and was getting lit up. But it was a good stoppage from Joe Diaz because you want to save him. You want to save him from himself as much as he wanted to fight. I mean, his eyes were about swollen shut and everything like that. You know, so sometimes you got to save a fight for himself. So that was a great fight. And again, it was a straight schooling. And then this time Crawford though was more out. You know, he said he wanted Pacquiao. He said he wanted people, man. He finally said there was no beating around the bush. He wanted some actual opponents. And well, hopefully, like I said, I mean, for 140, I mean, I want him. I mean, I personally would not mind an Indongo fight. Get the unification for all 4 belts, and then afterwards, you know, go to. I mean, that'll be the perfect chance to go to 147, and then 147 still has some fighters in there that he could, he can become a star in that division. But I would love for him to actually unify those belts at 140. All it would just add to his credentials. And Dongo, of course, I think deserves a fight. After scoring the upsets that he has, and he's also undefeated as well. So I mean that fight's. I mean you could put that on an undercard or whatever, or put that. I mean you could sell that fight in some way, but just have to see how it goes. As for Felix Diaz, I mean he gave it a good shot, gave it an old try. Came up short, so I mean he'll probably be back. I mean give him a couple months off. He'll probably be back in maybe 4 or 5 months or whatever, and hopefully maybe he picks a division to fight in instead of doing a lot of the jumping around that he's been doing. So, but I mean he put forth an effort, a pretty good effort. So I mean, apparently, I mean one day he'll probably knock off somebody in the division. Hopefully, maybe at welterweight or something like that. But we'll see. So yeah, I mean those are my thoughts on the on those cards. Like I said, it was a great night of boxing. I was entertained watching boxing for damn near 5.5 hours or so. So I always like it, when they have a loaded weekend or loaded Saturday of boxing. And of course I had nothing going on, so it was great to catch all those fights. So. Yep. Until next time. Peace.